This short presentation will offer some different thinking around the use of and experience of affective statements, particularly in education, as that's the area that I'm drawing from. I'm grateful for the work of Joe Brummer, the Centre for Nonviolent Communication, and the work of Lindsay Pointer, Kathleen McGooey and Hayley Farrer that informs a lot of our thinking at the Restorative Lab. We're generally more familiar or more comfortable with affective questions within our restorative practices toolkit. These questions have been designed to help us and the person that we're in communication with to learn about each other and the situation, to gauge mood, and to cultivate empathy ideally. When we ask these questions, we tailor them. We ask in the spirit of curiosity, we make sure that they're open-ended and that they are affective. But what is affective and why is it important to restorative practice? The affect system is the motivating force in human life. Affect theory places emotion at the core of the human experience. Sylvan Tompkins, the main guy behind affect theory, says that our affects are biological blueprint of responses that we all share as human beings. He identified 9 of these affects that drive us, and these are organised into 3 categories: positive, negative, and neutral. The 2 positive affects were identified as inherently rewarding, that's why they're positive. The 5 negative affects were identified as inherently punishing, negative. And there's one wild card affect, and that's neutral. Our affects are often buried deep within us, and we find it hard to recognise them or express them sometimes because we've just got really good at spoken language and scripts and deeply complex ways of communicating. And this evolution kind of gets in the way of the simple stuff, like recognising our affects. One way to do this is to explore needs and feelings. And the affective questions we use do this really well. They are affective because they help people to connect with their feelings and their needs. But there is another tool we can use, affective statements. But before we get into them, we're going to see what's difficult about affective statements first. Affective statements in restorative practice are often described as a personal expression of feeling in response to another's positive or negative behaviours. But they can look and sound like this. When we imply that people are the cause of our feelings or that their behaviours are causing our feelings, it will be heard as blame and fault. And when we feel at fault and blamed, we go to a defended place and our shame affect can be triggered. Feelings are caused by needs and unmet needs, not the actions of others, which is why the same action can cause a different response. For example, my colleague Terence was late to my Zoom meeting on Monday. That left me feeling really happy because I was eating my breakfast and I needed time to enjoy it. But when Terence was late to my Zoom meeting yesterday, it left me feeling frustrated because I needed structure in my day. If we learn to explore our inner worlds, our needs, we can better regulate our emotions. If we can become more conscious of what we need, we might stand a better chance of getting it met. This is important as it can stop us suppressing our emotions and then them exploding or coming out randomly during an argument. When we see others as the source of our pain, we increase the likelihood we will want to punish them when those feelings cause hurt or pain. And so we become complicit in the cycle of violence this way. But if we learn that feelings originate and are caused by ourselves, we can better manage getting in and out of the blame game. A good way to check that we're going along the right lines with our affective statements is to see if they've got more blame in them or more connection. A version of an affective statement that helps us to connect better are ones that are informed by Marshall Rosenberg's non-violent communication. These consist of a formula, OFNR. We make an observation about what's going on. We share what our feelings are. We state our needs. And if we're feeling brave, we can make a request. So here's an example featuring my colleague Terence again. So Terence and I have another scheduled meeting and he shows up 10 minutes late. That's an observable fact. And in my head, I start to tell myself stuff. So I might say, it's 9:10. There goes Terence again. He's 10 minutes late. This is how he rolls. God, doesn't he care about this work at all? And I create this whole narrative about Terence. The alternative is to use the OFNR formula. So I might say to Terence when he turns up, Terence, you showed up 10 minutes late to our meeting. I felt frustrated. I might pause there and let it be taken in that the action triggered a set of feelings in me. I'd move on to my need. Terence, I need to feel that the work we do is valued by both of us. In the future, if you're going to be late, can you let me know? So here are some tips to see how you're getting along with your affective statements. Have you got any blame in there? Have you used any yous? This can be a really good indicator of falling into the blame game, and trust me, you'll get trapped there. Replace your you with an I if possible. Secondly, beware of what's called blame in sheep's clothing. This is when we use language that sounds like a feeling, but actually it's coming across to the other person as blame. So we might be saying things like, I felt threatened, or I felt misunderstood, or I felt disrespected. It's just going to trigger something in the other person. Thirdly, beware of using a thought as a feeling. When we do this, we're not connecting with our affect. So our sentence might sound like, I feel that you, I feel as if, and we're putting it as a thought rather than a feeling. If it helps, connect the feeling to a physical experience. You'll locate it better. Next, naturalize it. Make it your own. People will sense if you're kind of reading off a script or being too formulaic. Teach it to others. This is a great thing to work with young people in particular, but be prepared for them to come back at you with some affective statements once they've learned how to do it. And finally, be prepared to hear no when you make a request. Give people the right of reply. You could say something like, is there anything I need to know about what's going on for you? So they get the chance to express too. Here's an example of an affective statement a lunchtime supervisor might use. When the rota is given on the day, I feel frustrated as I need to arrange childcare. Can you share it with me any earlier? And here's an affective statement that a young person might use. When you run up to me, I feel scared. I need to be by myself. Can you leave me alone for a while? But beware. These statements can develop assertiveness for some, but they can be tyrannical in others. This is why they are so often misunderstood and misused. Consider how you might ask permission to use an affective statement. Again, make the request your own in your own language. So I might say something like, I've noticed something about our team meetings that I want to discuss with you. Is now a good time? And then I'd go into the affective statement. And if the person said to me, no, Anna, I've got an irate parent waiting for me, I'd wait. I'd also work at bringing it up in a supervision in a gentle and assertive way if that was the right place to do it. A good place to be is in recognising the discomfort in this. It can be pretty confronting, but we need to see and feel the value that comes from using an affective statement on ourselves first and kind of sit with that discomfort. Using affective statements well means me taking responsibility for myself first And to help with this, I often use affective statements as a reflective process for myself first, and you can try it too. When you feel yourself charged or wanting to respond to something, just take a minute. What is the stimulus for your anger or your shame or whatever the emotion is? What's happened? What did somebody say or do? What are you observing? Write that down. Then write down what you were telling yourself. What was your internal monologue saying about that person or you or what just happened? This is important because this is you becoming conscious. Then ask yourself, what need of yours wasn't being met at that moment? And there's a great list of needs you can look up at the Centre for Nonviolent Communication on their website. Once you've got your need, what are you going to do about it? Of course, you might want to go ahead and formulate an affective statement to say to the person who was the stimulus for your feeling. But quite often, in fact, by going through this process ourselves, we realise that we have more resources to meet our needs than we first thought. This is a process that helps us learn more about our emotions and our mood, and from there, where we might want to go next. This is a way of developing emotional intelligence in ourselves first. By being honest with our expressions and our needs, we develop a greater sense of responsibility for the stories we tell ourselves and how we interact with others. Crucially, whether we are using an affective statement on ourselves or with somebody else, we are allowing people to take responsibility. And by taking responsibility, we are staying away from the effect of shame.